Hello, everyone. Today we are joined for the live session on professional year program, and we are going to discuss about the career and migration pathways and the benefits of professional year program. And we have a registered migration agent, Mr. Vaibhav Patel, with us in this discussion, along with a representative from Navitas. So over to you, Vaibhav.
Thank you very much, Isan. Welcome everyone. I hope everybody's keeping safe in this outbreak, and we wish everybody a good health. And please get your vaccinations done soon as well. Now, coming back to the point, so today we are going to discuss about professional year in detail, including about what Navitas has to offer in PY, as well as including what are the benefits of doing PY, why you should do PY, and what are the advantages or what are the benefits you'll get at the end of completing PY, except including the 5 points that you get from migration. But there are a lot many other benefits that comes along with it. So without wasting time, I'd probably like to go to David first. So David, welcome aboard, and if you can share the programs by Navitas in regards to PY offering, and tell us about how you're different from other institutes as well, and then why students should choose Navitas over any other provider.
Sure. Great. Thanks so much for the introduction, Vaibhav, and Aussie's team for inviting me to this session. My name is David from Navitas Professional. Before I begin, can I just get the co-host to help me share my screen to give me permission so I can share that? So today I'm coming from Navitas Professional just to talk to you a little bit about the courses that we offer. I'm from the Sydney campus, and you may be joining in from other parts of Australia, probably in Sydney or Canberra. I'll be happy to speak to you in general about the internship opportunities, as well as the course itself of what to expect. So can you guys see this screen?
Yep.
Great, thank you. So you guys might know a little bit about Navitas, the name. Professional in particular, we're a professional development and education provider that helps tertiary students, much like yourself, or graduates, or young professionals just looking to get into work placements and mentoring. And we connect with Australian businesses, global businesses, which I'll explain some of the host companies that we work with. And these programs allow the students to develop some soft skills and critical skills to grow your corporate careers in Australia. And so you can see here on this screen, we do have 8 delivery locations all over the country in every city. And that's one of the great things about the flexibility of joining Navitas. And today I'll just go through with you some of the streams that we cover. Accounting, IT, and engineering are the 3 main streams that you can join. So in total, it is for about 44 weeks. The 32 weeks that you'll be studying is doing the coursework. So developing your soft skills, getting your resume prep, that sort of stuff. And then after that 32 weeks, we'll guarantee the internship in your chosen field. As Vaibhav mentioned, you do get 5 migration points, and this is towards your PR residency application as well. And these are just some of the partners that we work with, as you may know, to get your skills assessments with these professional bodies that we work with. Great. So what is included into the course? We have a new transition into a new diploma. So the coursework that you'll do in your diploma, as I mentioned, is looking at your soft skills. What we find is during, I guess, the 2010 plus year, a lot of employees are looking for soft skills, the qualities of leadership, of teamwork, of communication in a really globalized, diverse culture right now, especially in Australia. And so we try to tailor all the important things that you need to learn on how to solve business communication issues, getting your personal branding, your LinkedIn profile up to scratch. And also some of the stuff that you get included is free online PTE and IELTS English test preparation training, just some of the bonuses that you'll receive as part of the course. as well as LinkedIn Learning, which is a really great self-learning resource. University learning doesn't stop when you finish university, and a lot of our employers are always putting emphasis on self-learning of candidates. So we find that candidates that take on LinkedIn, if you're coming from IT, you want to brush up on your Python programming skills, or if you're an engineering background, you want to brush up your AutoCAD or SolidWorks skills, great online resource there available. And also the last point here I mentioned is the career counseling that we provide. Even during and after the program, after graduation, our placement coordinators who are responsible for connecting graduates to the companies, they're more than happy to have a talk to you to see what's working, what's not, and to really keep in touch and look at your resume, prepare for any potential interviews, that sort of thing. So there's always great ongoing support for our students. As I go to the next stage, this is just some key stats, some numbers about the workforce of the future. You can see here a lot of emphasis, as I said, about not just the hard skills, the technical skills that you've learned from university, but also how to, have a very complete way of doing teamwork, management skills. 71% of the job advertisements here show that, as well as on the right here, you can see that all of our students are placed within the field that they match their qualifications with. So today, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the internships in Sydney and Canberra. The list that you see on the bottom here are national companies that we have worked with in the past. Some of them are necessarily not based in Canberra or Sydney, but we have placed some of these students in these industries. So you can see a mix of banking, finance, a little bit of engineering here as well. And so for Sydney, in IT and engineering, what we see is a lot of projects happening, especially since the pandemic. A lot of the projects, a lot of the recruitment is moving online. And we have sent students to these companies in the past. In terms of Canberra, it's mostly IT related, probably in the security, cybersecurity, networking, infrastructure roles. And since last year, when COVID hit, we've still been placing these students, no issues. Sometimes they may have work from home arrangements, but we find that our host companies are quite flexible in offering these internships. So we can, at the end, if you have any questions, more than welcome to talk about the different types of opportunities specific to Canberra and Sydney. But yeah, this is a great example of some of the companies that we have worked with in the past. Some additional stats, some numbers since 2008, since our inception, we've placed more than 15,000 students, which we equated to more than 4 million hours. So we've run a survey as well of how they enjoyed, how they experienced the internship. And so these are some really positive numbers from the survey results. So this next internship process explains how you would come from the interview stage into the placement stage and your last stage of the professional year. So every student that comes to Navitas Professional, you'll talk to myself or one of the team just to get to know your engineering, IT interests, your background. And with this information, it will help us place you into the right internship. We don't want you guys to do a lot of printing or getting coffee for your boss. We want to make sure it's a project-driven internship related to what you studied at uni. And so we collect your resume, try to polish it up, make sure it's relevant to the industry you're applying to. Every industry, like a marketing resume, will look very different to an engineering IT resume. So we send that to our host companies, host company A, B, and C. We arrange the interviews for you. And then if you have your own internship or your own job, we can then count that towards your professional year as well. That's the other benefit. And we sign that agreement just to make sure the roles are clear, your expectations are clear as well. And that process is then completed. That completes your 12-week internship. And after that, you'll get your graduation certificate, and that will be your evidence to claim for 5 points towards your migration. So this is just an overall process of what that looks like for the internship component. The interview part's really important. We might touch base with you more than twice just to make sure your interests are met. So some of the questions you might ask is how many students, or what is the percentage of students that may get a job after the professional year or our internship? Because after the internship, you do get a reference, which is really important, a reference from the host company. Sometimes, it might be hard to get a job when people are asking for, experience. So it's really useful to get a local Australian reference, and you can build that towards bigger opportunities. So 50%, half our graduates are employed by the host company. It depends on the company, obviously. They're not obliged, but it depends on your relationship, your performance, sometimes a bit of timing and luck. So I think that's a good number. And of course, that increases to 80% because we gather the information of what students are doing after graduation. And they may, as I mentioned earlier, they may use their local reference, their professional reference from the PY and apply to other roles. So we touch base with these students. How many of them, where are they now within the 6 months? And we find that 80% of them are working after graduation, which is a great number. So much like myself and everyone so far in Sydney, we are doing online classes since last year, actually. And so all of the consultation, the interviews are done online, the classes, and sometimes we do also virtual internships, which is only a handful of students, depending on their location and the internship, the types of internship they require. And also we have no issues in placing students, as I mentioned before, to the host companies. So it's always a good the technology is great. It's a good way to communicate. But also I do appreciate some students do want to come back to class or do site work. And, in some engineering roles, some IT roles with NBN, we have worked with NBN before as well. Students are required to come to the site. Obviously, that depends on the employer. So now I'm just going to go into the program fees. You can see here the 3 streams, accounting, it's 8750, payable in 8 installments. ACS, IT, 11300, and that's also in 8 installments. Now with professional year in engineering, that's payable to the professional year after you do the skills assessment, and that's payable in 3 installments, totaling 15,500. And this might be a good, I guess, transition to go into the entry requirements, that I can talk a little bit about the entry requirements. I'm just going to share my screen with you here. Can you guys see this? Can I get yes? Confirm. So the orange column here is the professional year. I know it's a lot of information, but basically the first most important thing is your visa, to make sure it's got 12 months left on your visa. And these are the eligible visas you can see. So 485, usually we get the students coming from this stream of postgraduate visa. Okay, and you need to have an engineering course or degree that you've studied at least 2 years in Australia. Okay, if you haven't, then we look at your overseas degree, and that can't be more than 4 years from application date. Okay, we also accept 476 visas, but I don't think that's coming in soon, just due to COVID restrictions. So that's the visa entry requirements. With IELTS and PTE, you can see here, it's 6 overall for IELTS and PTE equivalent of 50. And it has to be taken within 3 years, okay? With IT, It's a little bit different, at least 2 years full-time study in Australia, and also no recently completed within 2 years. So we won't consider applicants who have more than 2-year gap, but this is something that I've spoken to Aussies, and we might have to clarify or revise this requirement. But as long as you have a 2-year IT degree minimum, that would be the requirement. And the entry requirements for English is similar as well. In terms of visas, I guess I can leave it to Vaibhav to talk about the visa validity and the eligible visas, but you can see here, these are some of the examples that we can accept. So bridging visa holders, some secondary visa holders as well. Great. So going back to the intake dates, for Sydney, we have an intake date on average about 2 weeks every fortnight, and it's always on a weekend. So we find that most students are working on the weekdays, and usually their weekends are free. So the workshop would usually go from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Via Zoom. Obviously, between breaks with your trainer, we wouldn't want you to be in front of a computer for 7-8 hours. And for Canberra, we do have these intakes in August and September, but we'll be releasing additional dates in October once they're available on our website. But it's always good to contact the Navitas office just to make sure the seats are available, especially for those visa holders that might have a slight, urgent time frame of almost less than 12 months. So it's always good to contact office and maybe book or save your seat. Yeah. So at the end of this, before I wrap up, I just wanted to introduce you about our resume workshops that we are hosting. This is on an ad hoc basis, depending on registration numbers. So if you are interested in learning more about self-branding, personal branding, not just on your resume, but also boosting up your LinkedIn profile, we find a lot of opportunities for engineers and IT are now advertised on LinkedIn, and just to make sure your profile is looking snazzy, because you never know how many calls or inquiries that you might get rather than sending your resume on Seek, which always works. It does work, but you do want to make sure you have all your bases covered. So we make sure our students have all these support tools to increase their chances of getting that first interview. And you can email me your interest on this address here, and we can definitely get back to you and arrange a time with our placement coordinator. You can see Wibke, one of my colleagues. She's great. She's the one that looks after all the host companies to connect to students, get to know their interests, and place them into their internship. So now I've received a few questions from people. I guess we can open it for questions, I guess. That was pretty much the brief introduction of Navitas Professional.
Thank you very much, David.
Yeah, thank you.
For detailed information. Now, yes, before I start discussing about further things, we can talk about one question that we've got from Ved Desai. And his question is that, can I transfer campus from Melbourne to Sydney once I start the PY? So David, if you can help us with that information.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Ved. So yes, there is possibility. The great benefit of Navitas is we do have locations all over in each city. The long answer is it depends on I guess, for several factors, with restrictions as well, also the visa length and the opportunities in that particular city. So for example, the other day I received a aeronautical engineering inquiry, and so there's not many, I guess, airline industries at the moment, or mining for that matter. We had a few mining engineers as well, and so going into Sydney or Melbourne, not many airline or mining industries. So we would have to look at other options if you are quite flexible. If you are open-minded in your opportunities in an internship, then that might be possible, okay? If, for example, you might have your own job or your own internship in that destination location, you might find a job offer in Melbourne or Sydney, that would make the case a lot more successful to transfer to that location. My recommendation is if you do have a long-term plan to complete your studies in a particular Navitas campus location, I strongly recommend you to commence at that location. I guess during COVID, there's a lot of uncertainty with movement and restrictions. But given all the reasons I've mentioned before, depending on your visa, your job opportunities, we could definitely transfer, but I guess it's on a case-by-case basis.
It is possible to transfer, right?
Yeah, it's possible to transfer. There is an application process. So I suppose that's the longer answer. We have to look at all the different types of information. So please submit the visa, your interest to transfer to a particular location. But yes, it is definitely possible. I guess it just depends on your internship and the internship that we can provide. Because the guarantee at Navitas is we're obliged. We have to present a guaranteed internship at the end. And if we find that we may not be able to guarantee that, the transfer may not be considered, or you might be waiting maybe a couple of months or deferring your internship until the placement can be found. So this is why we ask for some visa buffer on your timing on your visa. So that's a long answer, Vid. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, David. So yes, yeah. The answer is yes, it is possible as long as the Navitas or professional year provider can organize your internship in the new location. It is possible for them to transfer you from one location to another one, right? And that's the advantage of being with Navitas, because Navitas has campuses all around Australia, which is Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Canberra, Darwin, Tasmania. So you can Adelaide, you can move around as long as they can find an internship.
Yeah.
So, yes, sorry, David.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just agreeing. That's right.
So basically it's possible to transfer. The next question is from Brahmini. So the internship opportunities for achieving PR. Now, Brahmini, see the professional year internship, and even if it's paid work, the internship that you've done and 3 months internship, that period cannot be counted towards claiming your points for a PR. That's very important. So, but yes, the advantage of doing, professional year course, and especially with Navitas, and they would agree that because they have a lot of big companies, big employers, where you can always, have a possibility of getting an employment right after your internship. And now that, a lot of people are not able to come in from overseas, and a lot of companies are finding very hard to find people to work for them right now. The opportunities are increasing day by day. As the longer the borders are closed, the opportunities are more and more coming up, because what's happening is the new talent is not coming in, so the existing talent has to be utilized. And this is a right opportunity for a lot of the people who are graduating nowadays, that you should look at good providers and quality providers, so that you can always get a good internship, and that can have a very good possibility of getting ending up with a job. So your intention should not be just getting that 5 points for migration. So one of the advantages you have completing PY is that you get 5 points for migration. So, but apart from this 5 points of migration, it also helps you doing the professional year course, and especially with Navitas, is that it enhances your soft skills. You learn something new. You learn, as David mentioned, that you can learn soft skills, you can develop new soft skills, you understand the Australian labor market. How does the employer think here? They will also walk you through how you can end up with the job, what to do in the interview, what to say, what not to say, so do's and don'ts, right? So all these things will help you in understanding how you can crack a job. It's always about cracking the first job. Once you get a first job, it really helps you in getting up further in your career. Now, apart from the 5 points for migration, if you end up with a job, it will also help you in your migration again, because once you complete 1 year of work with your, if you find a job or if you end up with a job with the same internship, then after a year, you can also claim 5 points. Now, if you're, let's say, if you're in states like New South Wales, where even if you're working in your field and if you have not completed 1 year, but you're working in your nominated occupation, NSW state always invites people in this kind of candidates, because they are already working in the nominated occupation.
Yeah.
And some states, like let's say, for example, South Australia or Northern Territory or Canberra, where even if you work 6 months in your nominated occupation or 3 months, you can be nominated by the state. So, going with a quality provider will not only help you in getting that 5 extra points, but will always help you in maybe, increasing your chances of getting a job in your field, which will obviously will help you in the long-term career goal. It will help you enhance your skills, soft skills, and also will help you in other ways of migration if you end up with a job, because it will give you additional advantages of getting the state nomination from those states where you're living and studying PY. So understanding these points are very important, because we see a lot of people just look at the price tag and then choose the cheaper provider. But choosing the cheaper provider means that you're also compromising with the quality. So you will always have to look at what is the provider, what are the qualities that they're offering in return of your money. So sometimes, I'm spending $100, but I'm getting something cheap because I'm just spending $100 and getting good thing. But at the same time, if I'm spending $500 for the similar product, but then that has a lot of advantages. Like it has it would have more qualities in it. So, my choice would be to go to that provider where I can get a quality for my money, rather than just looking at the 5 points for completion. You should also look at, the additional opportunities you get, because right after PR, you will be probably wanting to get, let's say if you get a PR with just the 5 points of migration, but what if you don't get a PR? So then if you end up with a job, it will also help you somewhere in getting the job if you get a job, then it will help you in somewhere getting a PR as well. And if you get a PR, then the next part that you'll be looking at is settling down in Australia with a long-term career goal in the same field that you've studied, because you have not invested only $10,000 in PY. You have technically invested total 60,000 or more, because you've invested 50,000 or more in your master's degree, and then you're investing your $10,000 in your PY. So when you look at your investment, you have to look at it overall investment. And then after investing that $60,000, you do really want a good career in that particular field, right? So therefore, you should look at those things before you decide. As I said, the location-wise, Navitas has locations all around Australia, and therefore choosing the Navitas will also help you. Now, David, I had just one question. So, what are the things that the students can do while they're studying PY with Navitas, that it can end with a job? Like, let's say, for example, and also, how do you bifurcate students when you send a profile? So obviously you'll have like big companies, big providers as well, and then maybe medium-sized companies as well. So how do they end up with the internship? Do you choose where to send their profiles, or the companies choose the students based on their resume?
Yeah, good question. So I mentioned earlier about the internship process, where the interview is the first interview, which is a pre-enrollment interview. It's a casual conversation with our placement team, who's responsible for, placing the students. They're the ones that talk to the companies on a weekly basis and see what the market conditions are looking like. If engineering companies looking for a project manager, or a project assistant to help the manager, then we would say, okay, if person A has an interest in civil engineering and they'd like to get into drafting or project assisting, then we would reserve that seat for that student. Now, there's a lot of options here where we need to make sure the students are interested, they have some sort of interest. I talk to a lot of students that might say, oh, I'm open to everything, but generally we would ask you, give me 2 or 3 typical roles that you would like to do in IT. So that could be maybe in programming, could be in business analysis, or maybe in networking, in building infrastructure for a company. So we take those three priorities, we'll maybe rank them from 1 to 3, and then we'll then pass these notes when your internship is about to begin. So in those 32 weeks, when you do your coursework, we'll be working behind the scenes to prepare the internship and the interview. So after the 32 weeks, we would hope that, your confidence has been, up to 110%, your resume is looking great, your LinkedIn profile is snazzy, and then you're prepared to do your interview. We would pass these interviews to our host companies. And don't forget that these host companies are also recruiting other candidates too. So sometimes you might have to also compete with other candidates outside of PY. But the good thing is some of these companies, like in ING or in some of the hotels that need IT, like an IT department, we've been working with these businesses for more than 10 years. So they do know how we operate. They do know the types and the quality of students that come through our course. So sometimes if they're lucky, they would skip the whole selection process and we'll place them directly with no, I guess, outside competition, if you could say that. So that's just some of more of the bigger businesses. But we also work with small and medium businesses in Sydney. And I saw some of the questions also with location. So far in Sydney, we mostly do the internships within the metro area, the Greater Sydney metropolitan area. We don't really have regional internships at the moment. But if you do, maybe if you find your own job, your internships, that will also be considered as well. But yes, going back to the internship process of how we connect, once that whole interview process is done, or even before that, sorry, I should mention, we would give you the company profile of A, B, and C, because we want to make sure if you are interested in the company and you have some company background. So we wouldn't throw you into the internship blindfolded. We would definitely give you a background, a profile of the company, and a bit of background of the role as well.
Thank you very much, David, for the information. Now, as you guys can understand that, so as David mentioned, that you should first understand what are your strengths and only choose the companies or roles that you want to apply for accordingly. So that, when you understand that, okay, I'm good at programming, then I'll choose course, positions related to programming only and apply in that direction. Because if you are if you're trying to be a master of everything, you can't be. So basically, so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you understand your skills, your strengths, and also identify your weaknesses, so that I don't want to go where my weaknesses are. I want to go where my strengths are right now, because I need to correct my first job, and then I can start working on my weaknesses. Right. So basically, see, as I said, a lot of students look at the price and the PY just 5 points. Do not look at that way, because it is more than that, and you are spending your $8,000 or $9,000 already with any provider. So why not just $1,000 extra, which will give you a very good quality. So if you are after your career in the same industry, definitely look at quality providers where they can promise you good internships and good teaching and learning skills that you're going to get at the end of the program. Right now, we'll take one more question from Ken. It says the question is, any offshore opportunities? Unfortunately, Ken, there is no opportunity for an offshore candidates right now for professional year. David, if I'm on a 485 visa and if I'm offshore, stuck offshore outside Australia, because I went overseas and my, the travel restriction came up and I couldn't come back. So is that possible that I can still study PY while I'm offshore?
Yeah, good question. Unfortunately, the professional bodies require all applicants to study onshore in Australia. Okay, so we've been trying to lodge this the past year for those students, because we've had some students who did the PY and then for whatever reason they had to go overseas, and they obviously with the travel restrictions it doesn't allow them to come back, and their coursework had been paused because as part of the guidelines set by the professional bodies, you would have to do the application stage and also the coursework and internship onshore in Australia.
Right. Thank you very much, David. So the next question is from Ramandeep. Her question is, can Navitas offer PY in IT in Orana region? Obviously, Ramanpreet, Navitas doesn't have a campus there, so they cannot deliver the program in Orana. However, because it's right now the studies are online, you can always join in Sydney and study remotely. But David, my question to you further to Ramanpreet's question. So in case, let's say if you decide to, after if all the outbreak is under control and we are out of COVID pandemic, then would Navitas, for applicants like this, would Navitas be flexible to allow them to study distant education because it's too, traveling is too much. So what are the options these students would have?
Yeah, so good question, because we do have in the past had students traveling, I guess, almost from Canberra to New South Wales to attend as a Sydney student. At the moment, all of our internships are currently in Metro Sydney, but with the classes, we do expect them to show up into the campus, in the Sydney campus, which is located in the city. So it can take a few, I can appreciate it will take quite some time. Probably once the COVID restrictions have eased, we may be looking at some flexibility in those students who are, if you have your job, if you have an opportunity in Harana, for example, and it doesn't allow you to come back to class, then we may be able to join via Zoom in the classroom. I think some universities, I can't say for other PY providers, I think other universities have been doing this for quite some time. So we might be following that model. At the moment, there's no guarantees. I guess just really depends on the restrictions, because if you're coming from a hotspot area, we wouldn't want you to come into a city campus, right? So I guess the best solution would be distance learning, and that would allow that without, so it just really depends, I guess, on the development of the cases. But yeah, to give you some perspective, as Vaibhav mentioned, we've been doing online for quite some time. To give you some perspective, we've been doing this since March or April last year. So of our Sydney students, they have been doing online studies since then. So a full year now.
Yes, so basically for now, Ramanpreet, answer to your question, can you study PY while you're in Harana with Navitas? Yes, you can, because right now the classes are online. The only part you might have to attend in person is if your internship is in person, and if there is no lockdown, obviously you will have to go to the internship in physically. So that's the only time, that 12 weeks time, that you have to go in person right for now, unless we go back to the normal after the pandemic is over. The next question is from Rohit. So the question is that instead of using the 485 visa after masters by coursework, can we do study PY for IT on masters by research when you're on a student visa? But let's say, so the question is that the student completes the masters of IT while on a student visa, right? And then takes another master's course in research program. So they have a full-time work rights anyways, and they have study rights as well. So will this visa allow them to study PY, or will Navitas or will accept this kind of students in PY?
Yeah, at the moment, we only accept 485s. Well, not only 485s, but I guess the better way to phrase this answer is we don't accept any student visas, unfortunately, at this stage, even though they have the full work rights. I think it's more of a compliance thing on our end, because we're not CRICOS registered, so we need to have students that are on a 485 or a similar visa, but not a student visa, unfortunately, at this stage.
I understand. So yes, thank you very much, David. So yes, you cannot study PY on any of the visa except 485. Now, thank you very much, guys, for joining, and I hope you understand the importance of PY and how it can help you in migration. As I said, not only 5 points, but also studying PY in Canberra, for example, gives you 5 points towards the Canberra Matrix 2. So it gives you 5 points in immigration points table as well as Canberra Matrix points table. Similarly, if you end up with a job in Canberra, for example, after the internship, you can also get get extra points for working in in your nominated occupation in Canberra. Similarly, let's say if you study in South Australia and PY, and if you find a job at the end of your internship, you get a job with the same host company, then you can also get, qualify for a South Australia state nomination once you complete certain number of years of certain months of experience. With like, for example, Darwin and Tasmania as well, it's similar things. So in Darwin and Tasmania, if you work 6 months, you can get a nomination. So if you study the entire PY program there, and at the end of the PY program, if you end up with a job, same host company, and if you get, if you get a job, and then after working 6 months, you can also get a state nomination from those states. And like similarly in Queensland and Victoria as well, there are always from time to time there has been a state nomination programs where people with work experience, especially in IT and engineering fields, can end up with a job after the PY with Navitas and get a state nomination because of that job. So, don't look at the PY just as an I pay $10,000 and I get my 5 points, but also it's much more than that. So if you have any further questions about PY, we do have a dedicated team member working in Aussie's all the branches. So you can always contact us, and we have a dedicated team who looks after the PY programs, and they can help you in understanding your options and what are and cater to your customized needs depending on what you're looking at and what locations you're looking at. So please do not hesitate to contact us on 0291528585 to know more about PY. And graduates who have completed studies recently in IT engineering and accounting field, and if you're looking to study PY, also like to let you know that we do provide free 485 services and 1 free migration consultation worth $160, along with when you enroll for PY through Aussie's group in Sydney. So there are always added advantages on top of this PY program's advantages. So please feel free to contact us, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, David, and thank you so much, Vaibhav, for your valuable time. Guys, if you have any questions, the link is in there in the description. Just post your questions and our team will surely get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.